Welcome to Wakey, Echoes of the Esoteric. S here alongside co-host Jenica Haywood and the most beautiful guest of the evening, Asia Rain. So glad that you could join us tonight.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here, actually.
We have quite a topic on deck.
Yeah.
This is part two of the conundrum. I'm going to call it the conundrum because it is a bit of a conundrum, not in second level teachings, but from the perspective of the exoteric, it is quite a conundrum. The conundrum of the spiritual warrior. Now, we dove into this last week and we started to parse it apart, Jen and I. So we're super glad that you're here this week to assist us in the reconciliation of this topic and I don't know, bringing it all together in a way that people will be able to digest. At a minimum, it's seeds planted, right? So we've talked about a lot of things, and I kind of want to do a little recap here. We've talked about the idea of this perspective of the spiritual warrior being one that calls us to shine a light on things that are wrong in the external world and say, hey, God missed a spot over here. Don't worry, God, I got it. I'm going to help out, right? I'm here. I can do the job. Warrior for spiritual justice. Ooh, that's another one. Spiritual justice. All right. So let's not get too carried away. The idea of the flashlight for God. This is hyper relevant, as we know. And the aspect of not really being able to come to terms with that idea that everyone who is here on the planet is here having the experience that is uniquely fitted for their soul journey. Now, we talked backstage, so I'm just doing the recapping to bring us all back up to speed. And for everyone who's watching, we talked backstage about this aspect of, well, the clapback. Right? The clap back to this entire conversation. And it's often in the form of, what do you mean I shouldn't help people? What do you mean I shouldn't do what I can to help people? And that's not at all what's being said. We're talking about helping in ways that are possible. Helping in ways that are actually possible. We can't shift the course of humanity with a picket line. It's not going to work. Pipe up, both of you.
Yeah, I've kind of just had on my mind that like a lot of the way that this is understood is through, again, like this pedestal of servitude and life purpose, life calling, life purpose. Like you go through enough of your own healing, enough of your own trauma, this exoteric world to this point of, I know what my calling is. And it's in this level of helping someone that's less fortunate, helping someone who is, experiencing something that's, wrong. This whole idea of justice, this whole idea of, serving the good and fighting against the bad. And that just kind of keeps ringing in my ears of like, most of the time, the way that it's perceived and understood isn't necessarily, hey, God, like I'm going to shine this flashlight on what you've missed. It's more of, I've received my calling from God to change this, to put all my time and energy, gifts, intuitions, anything I can offer in servitude of God and the greater whole. And that's kind of what we're trying to like turn the kaleidoscope a little bit here for you to like get a different picture of what's really going on. Understand that there's not a way to change humanity. Understand that the place that we are here is a place of duality, and there is at no point in time going to be an overcoming of the dark by the light. It's not possible. It's against basic law.
Yeah. You said something really, man, it hit me. It hit me in my loins. The way you said it had to do with Jesus. You're like, if that's what was supposed to happen, it would have happened when he was here. You said
Yeah.
oops. You said oops.
I,
To be continued. ... Right? Like, because this now the second coming. This will reconcile it, right? Because there was just a little whoopsie. There was just and that's not at all. To be fair, to be clear, and to be fair, that's not at all my perspective. But if we're gonna put on the voice of dissent here, that's what it might sound like, right?
Well, I think what's happens is the perception. Humans, people really, they look at injustice, they look at the things that they're uncomfortable with, they don't know how to control, they don't know how to address it. It's got to be labeled, but humans really like things to be really tidy, lined up, so that they can make sense of it in a way that is going to maybe counterbalance what they can't make sense of, you know?
Mm-hmm.
well, and that's so much of why this topic has come up. Um, a lot of things fit under this umbrella of a grand awakening, of a second coming, where light will be, distinguished from dark, and all that is dark will be wiped away, and thus this heaven on earth will then come forward. A lot fits under that umbrella, and there's a lot of like self-justification and feel good and camaraderie in that story. And if you really do sit down and think about it, God, almost maybe not. If you don't have the knowledge of this esoteric wisdom, which specifically describes where exactly we are and what this is all about, there's a real tendency to really want to stay in that comfort, that narrative that a lot of people partake in as well, and it turns into this camaraderie, and again, this spiritual warrior, spiritual justice. We're on the side of good, and one day we'll be proven right.
I like that you use the word camaraderie because it does spread it out, right?
Well, that's
People are wanting to be able to save them. Like, they want to know people are going to be coming along with them. There's a collective that is going to be rescued by this event.
well, and I think a lot of that too is rooted in selflessness, servitude, a lot of what is interpreted from what Jesus was even exemplifying. That's also it's not clear, it's inverted, and it goes against, again, I'll say it again, it goes against the laws that exist here where we are in the cosmos on planet Earth. That specifically being that this is a planet of duality. It Which is why we're so obsessed with the good and the bad, and why we need that camaraderie, why we need the justification, why we have these incredible experiences of what's my purpose, what's my purpose, what's my purpose, and then through our own struggle and through our own experience we find it. But it's all still rooted in this idea that somehow we're going to overcome something that makes up this matrix, if you will, that we are in. I'm going to use that word lightly because I know that there's a lot of a lot of different understandings with that. But I mean, like, the experience, the tangible, sensical experience that we're having here is based upon the fact that we live on a planet of duality. There's not going to be an overcoming of it. And what I was saying, backstage is like, if there was a point in time in history where that could have been possible, it was when Jesus was here. If that really was the ultimate goal, it would have happened. Why continue to let the same things happen that have happened for centuries? We're living the same life that was back there. Just look around.
Yeah. Let's just I don't know, let's just throw it out there. That's not the point.
No.
It's not the point. It's contrary to the point. And you said something that I specifically want to highlight about overcoming duality not being possible ... for the masses. Right? Because
Very
what's
important.
possible for the individual is not possible for the whole. It truly is not.
Well, and I think that that's where the essence of spiritual warrior changes. When you stop focusing on the grander whole and what is wrong outside of you, and you flip that mirror to inside of you and start working here, everything changes. All of a sudden your playing board becomes entirely different. And yeah, it's possible to overcome duality internally, not externally.
It's the only place it's going to happen. The only place it can happen.
Which is the point. That's the point. We get stuck in spiritual warrior, social justice, spiritual justice, these massive conglomerate corporations, you know, entities of power and what they're doing, and we just love to stay distracted when really our source of power comes from us, for us, through us, about us.
Well, that's actually such a great comment too. But I can see that it would be possible to, if somebody was listening to you say that, ask the question, so where's God in all of this? Like,
I'm glad you
what?
asked.
Because the key is the mirror that flips and you start doing internal work. So I'm just,
Well,
gonna leave it right
to
there.
to answer that question, God is not anywhere near this realm.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. He, she, it, they, I don't care. It's the furthest away from where we are, especially if you reside at the moon's frequencies.
Which is possible here on Earth if you drop into that lower state. If you bring more laws onto yourself through unconsciousness, lower vibrational frequencies, you can chalk it up to a lot of different phrases, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we all know someone who is constantly surrounded by and experiencing suffering, dramas, you know, always in a loop of life is out to get me, everything goes wrong. That's a really good example of putting yourself under many more laws and resonating or vibrating at the same as the moon. But this is all to say that, like, it's not a there's not meant to be a God just right above us listening to our wants and needs and desires and hopes and dreams and look at all these things I'm doing, will you please bless me now, you know, like that's not, it's not meant to be that way. So even in saying this and saying like God is very far away from us, that's not meant to be like, so just give up now. It's not a negative thing. It's just the way that the cosmos is set up puts us in a place where there are multiple layers above us before we can even hit absolute or even get to the core of just minimal laws. I don't know if this would, we're talking about the ray of creation here.
Yeah.
Um,
Ancient wisdom teaching on deck
Mm-hmm.
that really cast an image of our placement in the greater whole of creation. And it starts with absolute. Absolute splits into three. Spoiler alert, this is a trinistic reality, right? So for all of you who are having trouble grappling with this idea, at the root of it is three and one. This is so deeply rooted in every ancient wisdom teaching that ever has been. And it all guides you to a process of inner evolution whereby you overcome that illusion of duality that has people so battling with the external world, just like a spiritual warrior would, saying, this has to change. I can do it. Here's my call. Not realizing, where you are, how far we truly are from the will of God here on earth, and that it is our call as incarnate beings on earth as part of organic life, that we individually overcome this illusion that we're born into and elevate our level of being to connect with higher realms, to come into that divine connection that we, God, if that word hasn't run rampant through the spiritual community, divine connection, this is what we're talking about. And it's the process of achieving divine connection that will turn every bit of what we've talked about as far as the conundrum of the spiritual warrior on its ear.
Mm-hmm.
In such a powerful way. Jen, you said something about taking your power back, because I know this is, God, that's something that so many can relate to, that just that terminology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that could be an entire podcast of itself, because as you know, taking your power back is a surrender to the idea that you never had any to begin with, and you're actually nothing. Sitting here on a darn near, it's a terrible place. As Gurdjieff would say, it's a terrible place. It's a terrible place. Far from the will of God. Here to live through and experience a journey as an earth being in a tangible realm where everything, all that is, has trickled down through layers and levels of laws to have us in an experience that has us scratching our head, all for the purpose of piecing the puzzle together and returning to source.
It seems like a pretty brilliant way to return.
It does.
But before you can, you need to even know anything about yourself to traverse any of this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it just occurred. Go ahead.
That's the thing that you said, and Asia just brought it back front and center. I had it, and then I lost it with so many other, it's like there's so many little tangents that we could go off on here.
There are, and it just occurred to me too that I feel like there's a point in time in our own, spiritual journeys where you kind of hit this point where it only makes sense to then turn outward and, use your gifts for good and service. And, there's been so much of the prerequisite exoteric inner work.
Mm-hmm.
But then you kind of hit this point of like, all right, well, I've brought myself to a level of, functioning that now it makes sense to turn around and serve my fellow man, to, accept my purpose or find my purpose. And likely that's going to be through servitude. And so then we go external and we push things out. And it just occurred to me that that's kind of that point in time where without an introduction into new knowledge, without an introduction or a potential to step into a deeper, completely new process of inner evolution, that's what you'll end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. There is changes and there is impact to be made, but you are here right now listening to this, likely because you're searching for that deeper next step, next phase of your own self-evolution, whether or not you are, putting your gifts out and serving in any particular way and doing your best to help. That's not the end all be all. That again, as we've established, that can't change things on the greater scale. And because you've then turned everything externally and are now pushing forth your energies outwardly, you're not going to progress in your own self-evolution either. So if you're happy there, it's great. There's many, many people who are, and it's very fulfilling, and there's wonderful things with it. But chances are, not even chances are, this is your invitation to actually look a little bit deeper into this world, the Akashic Kitchen, and see that there is something that is beyond where you've gotten to in your own self-evolution, and it doesn't involve changing humanity as a whole. It continues to involve changing yourself internally and ascending out of duality and actually accessing that third force, making yourself trinistic. If that's at all intriguing, I'm like, we're here. Here's the invitation.
Ta-da! It can be scary. It can be scary. You said that very well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a flip side to that, because I have seen people come into the realm, right? The realm of this work where they're coming into contact with this school and the teachings and getting scared.
Mhm.
And that makes it so easy to deflect back to the external and go, no, that's wrong. This is what we have to be doing because these people need help and this is how it should be. And like march, charge, right? Because the level of work that awaits you and that pivot back to the internal world for reconciliation can be fucking scary. It really can.
And I would argue harder than the path that you've been on thus far.
It's going to be
You gotta
extremely
be willing.
unfamiliar. Yeah,
Yeah.
you do.
You gotta
So
be willing to
unfamiliar.
let everything flip up on its head. And trust that there is another phase to this. No matter how much work you've done, no matter how far you feel you've come, like trusting and acknowledging that there's a whole new realm of work that looks nothing like the one that you've been in.
Oh, but that one you've been in prepared you.
It did. Prepared you
in ways.
Prepared you because of your strength and endurance, not because of the gifts and the knowledge that you gained through it.
No, in fact,
You
you gotta
have to be willing to put,
which is exactly that down. Yeah.
Put them in a pretty little box and just leave them out there and come on in.
Yeah.
Well, this is exactly why this topic.
Yeah. We'll get back to that.
Well, and it's why this topic, it ruffles so many feathers. Yeah. Like if you were upset at part 1 of the spiritual warrior, that's exactly why. Like if you're gonna let your identified self be so upset over a new idea that you're gonna be like that, this is some hogwash. Like the door is closed to you.
I've been mad at the internet before, haven't you? Haven't you ever had that experience of being mad at the internet? Because that's not our highest consciousness. It's really not. But we've had those experiences. It's so relatable.
Yeah.
So relatable.
But it does require putting your ego to the side.
That's
it does
right
require
there.
Being open to recognizing that with as much as you know and as much as you've done and gone through, it's small beans compared to this next step.
Well, it also implies that, just like you said, you've got to put it aside. And if you're identified with it, attached to it, if you have found a lot, I don't know, something in it that really helps solve some problems or ease some issues, or you just feel really confident in it, to be able to look at that and say, and now all of that gets to be put aside because now there's something new, could really be interpreted in a threatening way. And so stepping into it more with curiosity could be helpful. But then as you keep going in it, you're going to start realizing what that really means. And the work really starts working on you for sure.
Well, and I will say that you are identified. That's why your feathers are ruffled.
Like, you can't have ruffled feathers and not be identified. That's
yeah, and I'm speaking from experience. This is not at all calling anybody out. This is 100% recognizing all of the ways that I was like, hold up, like I know this. And getting my, humility beaten into me in a way.
Brought forward.
In the most loving way. Oh, but there's just so much more to know. There's so much nuance. There's such a higher perspective view on everything that's going on. And it's not for us to be able to stick our hands into it and think that we are the creator and can make it change. We get to do that to ourselves, but not everything else. But the brilliant thing is we get to understand everything else. Yeah. That those burning inner questions or frustrations because you don't understand how there can be such horror and such great suffering in the world, that gets reconciled, that gets rectified, that has understanding that comes along with it. But only if you're willing to put your ego aside and walk through a door that strips you completely naked and vulnerable. You've got the strength. That's what
I love
it's
that you said
for.
naked. I love that you said naked, because clothes, as we know in the ancient language of parables, as taught by Jesus, is like new ideas, new concepts, thought forms that you could put on and walk around in and have a completely different experience. Bravo. Thank you. You didn't even know you did that, did you?
Oh,
Awesome.
I love it.
Yep. Oh, man. Well, I hope this gives everyone plenty to chew on. And if you have questions, finish chewing and swallow, and then you're welcome to ask. Yeah. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here with me tonight.
Oh, it's been
I love
great.
it.
This brilliant conversation. And for anyone watching who would love a bigger bite, theakashakitchen.com. Join us for the journey. Link arms and enjoy the deeper work that awaits you. It is massive.
Yeah.
I use that word very heavily. It is not lightly at all.
Very purposely.
It is massive. It is massive. Thank you again to both of you, and to all of you watching. Hit us with your questions. Join us inside the group. And until next week.
See you then.
See you then.